we need to talk about the plasma gun. The plasma gun, veterans' best weapon, and for my money, veterans' best looking weapon as well. I mean, look at the attention to detail that went into the fibers on these hoses, that went into the crack in the glass covering the little heat indicator, that went into these moving elements that are powering down as the gun cools off, not to mention the radiator itself that glows in this really cool way. As you build up heat, it starts to crackle with light and electricity, and then you have the barrel itself that will start to glow orange if you hold down a charged shot for too long. All of this screams an artist who loved working on this thing. This is someone whose attention to detail really paid off. This thing is an absolute work of art, and I'm certain that Games Workshop was thrilled to see this thing realized in Darktide. It perhaps is one of the best realizations of a 40k weapon in any piece of media I've ever seen. It really is a delight to witness, and it's got this lovely, elaborate reload animation. Watch this little button pop out. Wow, like look at those moving, intricate elements. This thing was someone's like months of work to make this thing work, I'd have to imagine. And it's just a shame that it's an overpowered piece of trash.
Garbage day! Huh? No!
The plasma gun is a great example of a weapon that was designed first and foremost to look cool and feel powerful. And for what it's worth, it really nails that assignment. It falls into a league with other weapons like the bolter that are really faithful to the lore and are perhaps some of the best representations of their weapons within any 40k game, but they were given arbitrarily large amounts of power just because it makes them feel cool and look cool and get people into the game. For a bit of an anecdotal story, I heard from a first-hand account that the way that the plasma gun's attack values were chosen was by the designer of the gun choosing arbitrarily large values and then those values never being changed after the fact. So it has always been overpowered and imbalanced because it was never balanced to start with. Compare this to a lot of the other filler guns in the game, like your braced auto guns, and especially some of your headhunter auto guns. These weapons were balanced meticulously by members of the design team, who made certain that their values were well within a certain limited range, that they had ups and downs and quirks to the different firing patterns. And then you have the plasma gun, whose single fire shot is roughly twice as powerful as a charged shot from a Hellbore las gun, and it has infinite cleave while we're at it, right? So this gun is just bonkers broken, and so we're going to go over a few reasons today why this gun is so broken. And as I already demonstrated, this gun one-shot levels a crusher. But what does that mean for its ammo economy? Because ammo economy is a very important part of any weapon. Well, as you can see here, a fully ammoed plasma gun has 303 rounds available to it. That means when we fire a single light shot, it takes 3 rounds. That means that you are taking approximately 0.9% of your ammunition on each fire. So you have 101 shots to spare, more or less. Compare that to another single shot weapon that's ostensibly supposed to be pretty powerful at eliminating single targets. Enter the Zerona Quick Draw Stub Revolver. This is one of my favorite guns in Darktide. It just has such a super cool western feel. I love how snappy each of the shots is. I love the precision and the power, and it's one of the best sniper rifles in the game, ironically, even though it's just a revolver. And unfortunately for the revolver, it happens to fit into sort of the same niche that the plasma gun does. So when two organisms try to occupy the same niche in biology, one of them is going to go extinct. And unfortunately, this gun is being outcompeted by the plasma gun, and so it's starting to go extinct. Well, why is that? Well, it's got a couple of deficiencies compared to the plasma gun, just a couple. Number one is that dealing with heavily armored targets like this is a real struggle for it. If we have guaranteed crits using surgical, one of the blessings in the gun, we can kill a crusher with 3 headshots. Oh, I missed. If we devote the second blessing on this gun to killing crushers, we can kill them in 2 critical headshots. And that means we're just on par with the plasma gun, which can kill a crusher in 2 critical headshots, but that gets to use the best blessings available to it, which also help against all other targets as well. So we're already falling behind on damage. What about the other main factor for many ranged weapons, which is the ammo capacity? Well, as you see down below my hexagon there, we have 70 maximum rounds. Obviously, each shot takes 1 round, and that means there's 70 shots available. For the plasma gun, for light attacks, you get 101 shots. That's a 44% increase over the revolver here. So when you start the game, you can kill 44% more enemies before you need to get any more ammo, which is crazy, crazy difference. And that's not even to mention the difference in power between each of these guns' shots. So 1 shot on this gun does this. Okay, staggered him backwards a little bit and did about 1/3 of his health bar. Let me show you what the plasma gun does with 1 shot. Took about the same amount of health, but it staggers him and puts him fully to the ground. That amount of stagger differential is huge in a game where these enemies are trying to, normally actively get to you and murder you. So why does this gun have 44% more ammo than one of the most high-powered single-target guns in the game? It has who knows how much more stagger value that is. And I forgot to mention, this gun has infinite cleave, which means I can just spawn in, let's say, a bunch of berserkers like this, charge up my shot, and kill them all. The revolver has a maximum of 2 cleave, so I would be shooting that pile of berserkers all day. This gun, in terms of its efficiency per shot fired, has no comparison because of that infinite cleave. It can kill an unlimited number of enemies with a single shot, as long as they are tightly enough stacked. And that is helped by the fact that this weapon, especially when it's fully charged, has a bullet width the size of a small tree trunk. So you're gonna hit the target even if you would normally slightly miss, which is a huge boon over something like the revolver, which has like a scalpel required accuracy. If you miss even slightly, you're missing entirely. So that's my rant about the ammo and damage, but what else is there about this gun that's completely broken? Well, it's the magazine capacity, of course. One of the limiting factors that's intended to balance a weapon like the bolter or like the Zerona is the magazine. They're only supposed to have a certain amount in there before you need to reload, and the reload is a long and painful process. This gun seemingly doesn't have that limitation. It has 135 ammo in its magazine. Each shot takes 3 ammo, so that means we can fire 45 times light attacks before we need to reload. And you might be saying, Mr. E, there's the heat element to take into account. If you get all your heat up, you can't keep firing. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. I can fire 8 times before I need to vent at all. And how long does venting take? Just only a couple of seconds, and it can be done while the weapon is unequipped, which is just completely bonkers, because oftentimes you need to weave some melee attacks in anyway. So you can fire 45 times before you need to reload at a bare minimum. And finally, we have to talk about blessings, because for some weapons, blessings can be like the icing on the cake, right? They can take a weapon that's already pretty good and put it into the stratosphere. The plasma gun is already in the stratosphere, but this thing is sending us to fucking Saturn. We've got blessings here, Gets Hot and Rising Heat, that take what's supposed to be the negative, the downside, the thing that you are supposed to play around with the plasma gun. It's the heat level, right? It's supposed to be the limiting factor for things like stabs and the plasma gun. It's like, oh, I can't keep firing because I'm getting too hot, but it gets benefits out of getting hot. Specifically with Rising Heat, it gets 20% strength, which is absurd. 20% strength. Strength is damage and stagger. 2 things this gun already has plenty of, and now we're multiplying it by more. We're crazy here. And then Gets Hot is just going to give you more base crit, and range critical damage is even higher, so your crits are hitting like a small freight train. It's just absurd that we get to have good blessings on top of a weapon that is completely overstated. So looking at the big picture for this thing, right, here's what I want to go over. We already talked about how the damage is just absurdly, arbitrarily high. We talked about how it has infinite cleave, and so literally as many enemies as you can get in front of the barrel will die when you fire, which in turn means that our ammo efficiency is through the roof. If it wasn't already through the roof, because we have so much ammo, we have 101 shots in our total capacity, we have 45 shots in the magazine, and the only downside of this weapon is that sometimes you might need to reload, and that takes a while. But if you're using Weapon Specialist in the Veteran tree, then it reloads for you every time you get melee kills. So we've pretty much got that covered. And how bad is reloading anyway? Like, you can fire 45 shots. That's like more than like 50 kills probably before you have to reload even once. So this weapon, it just completely makes one whole class of weapons irrelevant. Now, if there was other options for specialized weapon types on Veteran, those might be choosable. So, for instance, if Veteran had access to a flamethrower or a grenade launcher, those types of weapons, since they are indirect fire weapons, they could compete with the plasma gun even if they weren't as absurdly statted, because they do fundamentally different things. But the problem with the plasma gun is that every direct fire weapon, meaning weapon where you point the barrel at the enemy and you want to kill the enemy that's in your reticles that the second you press it, all of those enemies those guns have to compete with the plasma gun for superiority. The revolver has to say, hey, am I as good at the plasma gun at killing these enemies here and in the same amount of ammo, and do they die in as few shots? And if the answer is no, there's really no reason to bring the revolver over the plasma gun. So every weapon, almost every weapon in the arsenal, DMRs, revolvers, the infantry auto guns, all that stuff is competing with this thing. You have to measure up to its DPS check, you have to measure up to its ammo efficiency, and it's just not going to happen. So this thing needs to be nerfed, because you cannot buff everything else up to this level. This is very much like when I discussed the Veteran Shout problem, is if you buff the other abilities to the level of Shout, we would end up with some of the most broken things the game has ever seen, because Shout is the most broken thing the game has ever seen, and then followed shortly by the plasma gun. So we can't be buffing these other things to this level because it would just be absurd, but what we can do is bring this gun down and then bring the other stuff up to compete. And I really don't feel bad about saying that. You know, sometimes I feel bad about saying, hey, we should nerf this thing, definitely nerf this thing, because that's someone's baby, right? That's something that someone enjoys playing with. And generally, I don't love to call for nerfs in PvE games, but this gun specifically, I think is one of the most unfun weapons to play with on your team. And I don't mean to use, I mean to have equipped alongside you on a team, especially if you are playing in sub-Havoc difficulties, or, God forbid, non-Auric difficulties. If you have a veteran who knows how to aim at all with this thing on your team, you basically don't get to play. And I think that's many people's introduction to the plasma gun, is another person on their team running it and just obliterating every shotgunner, every crusher, every gunner before you even get close to it. God forbid you are a player who just picked up the new Ogren and you're like, all right, I'm going to try out this build. And then the plasma gunner is just killing everything before you even come within a quarter mile of the thing. You're just cross-mapping every elite. That is a problem in my perspective. When guns not only reduce the diversity of the base of weapons that you can be using within their sphere, but they are actively reducing players' enjoyment of the game, they gotta go. And I think it's worse than Dueling Sword by a lot, actually, because Dueling Swords are melee weapons, and in order to kill stuff with the melee weapon, you have to run up to it and hit it. There is nothing less engaging than standing a quarter mile away from enemies and shooting them with the plasma gun. And so you can just have one person in your team who cross maps everything, and there's no engagement with those enemies required. And I think this is part of why Havoc was designed to have that ammo nerf in it, is because that is a very unengaging way to play the game, is to stand back and just ranged attack everything down. And they were worried that that's how players would clear every map, is just shooting everything to death without even trying to melee. Now they forgot that flame staffs exist, and they forgot that the plasma gun has far too much ammo to ever even consider that as a problem, but that's a topic for another day. So this thing has just got to go. It's unfun. It kills competition, and I would love to see something else rise and be in the meta other than this hunk of junk, this beautiful, well animated and artistically designed hunk of junk. I actually just realized I had one more thing I wanted to say here before I sign off, which is just generally about the veteran class in in total. And it's something I've been concerned about lately because recently we had the reduction to Survivalist aura, where it no longer provides 1% of your ammo rounded up, which means, that's a pretty sizable nerf for that aura. We also saw the Chorus of Spiritual Fortitude nerf with the last patch, where it went down from 100 gold toughness, 20 every pulse, to 15 every pulse for a maximum of 75 gold toughness. And those willingnesses to nerf those powerful outliers in the game says one thing to me, and that is that Shout as a veteran ability could be on the chopping block. It could be next in line for something to catastrophically happen to it. And I think it deserves it, absolutely, because it is just a huge power outlier. It's a glaring outlier in terms of the power of these abilities, and it kind of, makes the game way too easy in some regards. But at the same time, that plus Plasma Gun is about all the veterans got left. If you take this man's Shout and you take this man's Plasma Gun and you lower him down and you don't buff other stuff like crazy, then he is definitely going into 4th place. If you didn't see my recent video where I went over the various power levels of the classes and evaluated which class I thought was best, I dropped Veteran to 3rd this year behind Ogren and ahead of Psyker, and yeah, I think it's well deserved. He is currently basically a glorified bot that walks around and shouts and provides you free ammo. Yes, he can do some good damage. Yes, he's good at sniping specials. But if you take his plasma gun away from him and you nerf Shout or something like that, he's going to be in really rough shape. So what I am hoping happens is something similar to what we saw with the Ogren, where we see a full class rework of his abilities specifically, his other 2 abilities specifically, and get some new stuff, get some new lifeblood in him. Maybe a rework of a good number of range weapons, because he's supposed to be this range specialist, and the problem is that many of those ranged options he had before are no longer options, because they just do not compete in any way with the top level stuff that he has. So if that top level stuff gets taken away, Plasma Gun, then he's going to have to rely on those lower tier weapons, and I'd love to see them brought up in the same regards that a lot of the Ogren weapons were when he got his rework. And yes, he might end up imbalanced and powerful, but Shout is already imbalanced and powerful. I would rather people have fun. I would rather me have fun, and right now, to be honest with you, I don't have a whole lot of fun playing Veteran. I find him very one note, and that one note is... Anyway, guys, that's it for me. Let me know down in the comments if you agree or disagree with my opinions here, and I'll see you very soon. Mystery out. Bye.